Hey everyone, it's Julian from Digital Trends, and I'm here with BlackBerry's latest smartphone. It's the KeyOne, and it's notable because it's one of the few Android smartphones you can get these days with a physical keyboard. But we have to remember that BlackBerry isn't actually making this phone. The company has a partnership agreement with TCL, a Chinese manufacturer, and they're making the phones, but BlackBerry is handling all the software. So everything you see here software-wise is coming from BlackBerry, and that includes monthly security updates and just any Android updates in general as well. So regardless, it still has to be met with certain design restrictions and guidelines that TCL has to follow so that BlackBerry maintains that sort of standard of durability, long battery life, and just having a good phone with a good keyboard. So it has a 1080p screen, but it has a 4.5-inch display, and that's really small, but it was necessary because they wanted to fit that keyboard right there. So really, you're not going to buy this phone unless you want and miss a physical keyboard. That's the key feature here, and no pun intended. So it has this physical keyboard right here, power button on the left, volume rocker on the right, and a convenience key, which we've seen on previous D-Tech BlackBerry phones like the D-Tech 60 and the D-Tech 50. And you have a USB-C charging port on the bottom and a headphone jack at the top. What's really neat is that this has a 3,505 milliamp hour battery, and that's surprisingly long lasting. In our testing, we used it for a full day, and I ended at midnight, and I came up with 40% left, and I haven't really seen that in a smartphone for a long time, so this can definitely get you through more than a day. It's also powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 625 processor, which isn't the most powerful chip, and it is a little dated at this point, but it's still helping this phone get massive battery life, and that's always a plus. You get 32 gigs of storage, but the good thing is there's also a micro SD card slot, so you can expand it to however much you want. So BlackBerry's KeyOne runs Android 7.1.1, which is the most recent version of Android. And as you can see, it also has the latest security patch level, and that's because BlackBerry really prides itself on security and wants itself to be the best. And no other manufacturer really follows through with every month security patches from Google, but it's nice to see that someone is, and that's always a plus. But as you can see, it's incredibly close to stock Android. In fact, I believe it is stock Android. You can get all the features you get with Nougat, including notification bundling, and the only differences really come in here, where you can see some slight tweaks to the app drawer, and some slight tweaks to the overview button, where you can see they have this different layout. I believe you can change it to your liking, but I actually kind of like this different style better. Unfortunately, there are a ton of pre-installed apps, but they're all BlackBerry apps. So if you're buying a BlackBerry device, you probably expect that. You can expect the same things like BlackBerry Hub, which is a sort of an app that shows all your notifications coming in from all your different apps, which is actually kind of neat if you want to just have one notification system and check on everything. And of course, there's BBM Messenger if you wanted to, message other people. And of course, there are security apps as well. I believe there's an app called D-Tech by BlackBerry, and this sort of gives an overall checkup on your phone just to make sure your security is fine. And that does things like check if you have a screen lock, and checks the apps consistently to make sure everything you're downloading is secure. But the real important feature here is the keyboard. And as you can see, it's a QWERTY keyboard, and it's surprisingly not too bad to type in. Let's quickly jump into Google Keep here. Hi there. Whoops. Welcome to Digital Trends. So it's really slow. Of course, for anyone transitioning to a button layout from a smartphone or a touchscreen smartphone, might take some time to pick this up, but of course, again, with time, I'm sure I will get faster, and anyone who's using this phone for longer than a couple of days will definitely get faster. But again, you have to get used to it, and It's really up to personal preference if you prefer keyboards over touchscreen keyboards, because sometimes, you know, it works well. Other times I really, for example, miss swipe gestures where I could just easily move around the keyboard and type things. But the fact that I get to press physical keys is also kind of nice in a way. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it just sometimes gives you a nicer feeling and a more final feeling when you're typing in on words and making sure you know what you're pressing. This keyboard here contains some capacity to do some gestures. So I can delete words just by swiping left like that. Unfortunately, I don't think I can undo that. But you also have some other neat features, like, for example, if I wanted to move through letters. One of the other cool things you can do is assign shortcuts to each and every key here. So for example, I've set G to open Google, and you can even long press to set it something else like Gmail. Same applies to any other key, you just have to press that. For example, this is mapped to Facebook. I don't think I've set anything if I long press it, but if you haven't, you can always pull this up here where you can choose either an app that starts with an F, for example, or you can do other shortcuts like right here, like sending a message to someone, or other shortcuts which you can view here. And that's actually a really neat feature, because finding apps doesn't feel as fast, because I would have to quickly tap there to search something, and for me, using this keyboard is a little slow. So having the ability to just quickly press something that I'm looking for, like G for Google, it's really nice, and I think it's one of the best features of this keyboard. But if you press and hold this button, you get access to emojis, the clipboard, settings, and voice typing. So voice typing naturally lets you type with your voice, as in the typical Google account settings. And if you try that again, you can access your clipboard. And if you press that again, you can access emojis. So you're not completely reliant on emoticons or using, you know, standard emojis you would try and use here. You have also access to all these Android emojis baked into the phone. So there's a virtual keyboard that you can actually toggle on if you so desire. There you go. So obviously a little redundant there, perhaps a little unnecessary, but of course if you wanted to type something, there you go. It works just as well. Again, you're seeing a lot less than you should, but it's certainly there. The camera at the top is an 8-megapixel camera, and on the back you have 12 megapixels, and it's surprisingly good. Let's take a look at a picture I took last night. It's pretty good for a low light shot. There wasn't a lot of light there. As you can see, the details are a little fuzzy, but to be honest, I wasn't really expecting much out of the BlackBerry camera, but I'm a little surprised, but that's a good thing, because the fact that it could take stuff like this is kind of nice. So one other thing I wanted to address is that there's so little that you get to see in this screen because it's so small. You know, coming from a phone like the Galaxy S8, which is conveniently right here, you get to see so much when you look at the screen, just in terms of content. You know, you can see everything that you want, and there's just so much more that you can see. I had to make everything smaller on this phone because I just wasn't able to see a lot. I would see maybe a few Twitter posts at a time. Let me go to Twitter. I can see 2 tweets, which again limits certainly what you can see on the screen at any given time, but that's just something to note in case you wanted or you enjoy using your phone for consuming a lot of content, especially watching videos, for example. It's just a little weird watching it when you know you have this giant thing on the side. For example, let's click on that. So it's certainly not terrible, but it's always, for me at least, it's bizarre having this little addition here and watching it like this. It just feels very compact, and And you can see the aspect ratio is also a little weird because this isn't a standard 1920 by 1080p resolution. So there's no other real reason to buy this phone other than the keyboard. There are a lot of other cheaper Android phones with better or similar specs, and ones that of course offer vibrant, bright displays. So really it all comes down to the keyboard, and if you sort of miss having that BlackBerry brand in your life. So if that's who you are, for $550, this is a pretty decent smartphone. But for anyone else that's just looking for their next smartphone to upgrade, I don't think this is the right choice.